Hello everyone, Morris here, and today is the final day of the Rare Era for Axie Infinity Season 4. So yeah, a bit of an update in terms of information for you, and hopefully it will help you with the final push. So basically, for the past, well, 2-3 days, I've been recompiling data on like the different archetype matchup and win rates. So yeah, I just want to go through it. I already put it up on the blog post, and I just want to actually go through it in the video as well. So the TLDR really is that Topaz is, well, as you would imagine, a pretty easy climb to the top 1,000 if you just want to climb to the top 1,000. And actually, Sustain and Jinx matches up quite well with Topaz. But if you want to play something different, then you can try Hot Butt if you don't mind losing against Topaz because it does have other good matchups or at least like reasonable matchups and it's something different that you don't really see much on the ladder. Okay, so actually let's just get into the win rates first. So here is the data for the win rates, and I've collected it. Basically, what I did was to collect data for the past 3 days, and I did that obviously on the 22nd of May. Uh, and so basically, I just looked at the top players, right? The matches in the well past 3 days, and yeah, see like how their matchups are. And so basically, I categorize them as top 100, top 200, top 500, and so on. So basically, top 100, we see that yeah, it's just interestingly, Sustain is doing pretty well. Okay, of course, Topaz you can see is good all across the board, but actually, okay, surprisingly, it's not that much, and that is because like there's just a lot of mirror matches, which means it just pulls everything down to 50%. But you can see it has overall like a positive win rate. Jinx and Sustain in particular do pretty well in top 100, and that is probably because like there's so much Topaz there, and Jinx and Sustain matches us pretty well against Topaz. The other interesting thing to note is that things like aggro, poison, and leafy, or even AoE, right? Those are the kind of team that kind of like farm. I won't say farm, but like take advantage of less optimized builds. And so if you get to the top, it's just really hard to compete with like the top builds. But if you go further down, say let's say the top 100, then Leafy actually has a pretty good matchup, right? Just because yeah, once you get to less optimized builds, then Leafy has this is powerful enough to actually get through them. So yeah, it's pretty interesting to see this, and let's actually get into it in terms of the actual matchup. Okay, before that, you can see AoE is really not doing well, and Hot Butt actually is doing not bad. So that's why I suggested that Hot Butt could be something to look into, and of course Poison as well. But Poison, I think it have to be played very well. So that's the part where I feel like Poison has the potential, but it really depends on the pilot. Like, yeah, it's just you have to stun or well sleep the correct axes and so on. Okay, let's get into the matchup and let's just look at the top 100 first. I'm not going to go into the text. Do feel free to check out the description to go into this blog for the text. But of course, I want to look into the data. So, of course, the top 100, there's really not that much in terms of like data. So I would suggest just look at the top left-hand side because this is the part where it's supported by relatively like good data, whereas the rest is really just like maybe a few matches, right? Because you don't really see the other teams represented. Having said that, okay, so one thing to note is that this is top like matches involving top 100 players, meaning it could be a top 100 players playing against a lower ranked player. Okay, so that's that a bit of bias as well, and that's why like maybe Topaz like they just have more optimized build and fighting against people with less optimized build. Having said that, it does give some hints of how like the meta or like the matchup looks like. So let's just look at Topaz first, and Topaz. Interestingly, doesn't really match too well against Sustain, and Jinx actually have a fighting chance. Okay, so that is basically the gist of it. But then okay, Sustain that does well against Topaz, so that's why I think actually is like something if you want to actually climb well, at the very top, then Sustain might be the way to go. But right, the downside is that it actually loses very hard to Jinx. So that's the problem with it. It does very well against aggro for obvious reasons. I mean, sustain's always been good against aggro, but yeah, just going against Jinx is just bad, right? Whereas Jinx really farms on the sustain and also have an okay matchup against aggro and Topaz, and that's why Jinx is also like up there. Aggro, unfortunately, like not it's kind of falling off. I feel especially at the top. Um, and do they have poison? Poison, unfortunately, yeah, Topaz is just too fast, but actually it matches okay well with the others. It's just Topaz just goes too fast. Like they rotate their decks too quickly with the high damage cards. Okay, that's basically the gist of it. And if we look at the top 200, like there's a bit more data there. But of course, if you look at the bottom right, there's really just like maybe one or two matches. That's why it's like a lot of 0 to 100%. That's because these are the matches amongst the less popular matchups. So it's really very few data out here. So what I would suggest, right, is to look at it the top 500 or the top 1,000. I think top 1,000 is the most informative in that sense. So here is the top 1,000. Um, so basically, you can see, right, it's actually pretty good in terms of like the data. You can look at the top um, corner, the top left corner. The top left corner is actually like supported by pretty good data because there's a lot of matches there. And you can see, right, it's the same similar trend. Having said that, now if you get to the top 1,000, it includes a lot more of the so-called less optimized builds. So that's why you can see, right, like Topaz actually matches okay well with Sustain and Jinx as well. That's because, sure, there are less optimized Topaz, but there are even like maybe worse optimized Sustain or something, right? So maybe that's why like the matchup is, but it's still, not the most favorable for Topaz. And similarly, right, Sustain. Just had a tough matchup against Jinx, but does well against like the others. And for Jinx, okay, so Jinx is actually not in a bad spot, but it does suffer a bit against aggro. And interestingly, it really suffers against Leafy, which is something that I find. I'm a Leafy player, so I kind of know. Every time I see Jinx, and I'm pretty happy just because it has a pretty positive win rate. So here you can actually see the others as well. So for example, Poison does pretty well against AoE. AoE is just really not in a good spot. You can see here. Um, yeah, Leafy is actually not that bad, except that yeah, when you like see Topaz, especially if you go second, it's just rough. Yeah, so I wouldn't look into the bottom right corner too much, just because yeah, it's still supported by very few data. Because let's say you see Leafy against Hotbutt, it's not very good, but actually if you go up here or go up here, and yeah, because this is like one match or something. So yeah, it could still be not good, but it's just not very like there's just not many data out here. Yeah, so that is basically like the gist of it. Yeah, if you play Topaz, you will probably climb to at least like top 500, I feel. Of course, assuming it's a relatively optimized build. Um, but yeah, so if you want some easy climb, then Topaz probably is the way to go. If you want to have some challenge and don't care too much about Topaz, then Poison and Hot Butt are pretty good as well. You don't really see AoE and triple out anyway, so like you can see Hot Butt actually does pretty well against other things other than Topaz. And Leafy is always fun as well, but it is tough against Sustain. You just can't get through Sustain really. So basically, basically hope for a draw. That's basically what I do, right? It's just that I try to play for a draw against Sustain, and against Topaz, just have to, yeah, try your luck, basically. Yeah, so of course there's a lot more that I haven't gone through, and do feel free to look into this data a lot more for yourself. But do note that like especially with X like the top 100, there's just not a lot of data out there. So like a lot of these numbers are really not supported by many data points. So do take note of that. And yeah, all the best with the final climb. And hopefully this is useful for you. And let me know if you want to see more of this kind of thing. And definitely we'll try to do more of this kind of video for the epic and the mystic era moving forward. Okay, so thank you very much again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.